Okay, welcome to an introduction to special education law. There are two bodies of law that we will be referencing today. The first is the IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and the second is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, or Section 504 for short. So under both bodies of law, school districts must provide a free, appropriate public education, or FAPE, to all students ages 3 through 21 that qualify. What is appropriate will depend on the student's individual needs. It's not a one-size-fits-all. School districts must provide FAPE in the least restrictive environment. A student has a right to be educated with regular education peers as much as is appropriate for that particular child. Least restrictive environment means that students who receive special education should attend the same schools, ride the same buses, and be in the same classrooms as other kids as much as possible. The LRE for each student may look different because kids are unique. The purpose is to discourage segregation of students with disabilities from being with their peers. Who qualifies for special education under the IDEA? A child with a specified disability who is in need of special education and related services will qualify. Who qualifies for protections and services under Section 504? Well, Section 504 and the ADA states that individuals with a disability are defined as persons with physical or mental impairments that substantially limits major life activities. So students with disabilities that substantially limit major life activities will qualify. Major life activities include such things as eating, seeing, hearing, walking, communicating, to name a few. It's important to note that a student does not need to have a Section 504 plan in order to be protected from discrimination under 504 and the ADA. Some differences between Section 504 and the IDEA include Section 504 is not as detailed as the IDEA. Similarly, due process procedures and the right to particular types of services are more general under Section 504. Despite some differences, basic special education rights relating to FAPE, free appropriate public education, in the LRE, least restrictive environment, and discipline apply under Section 504 as well as under the IDEA. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about special education eligibility determination and what that process looks like. First, I think it's important to mention that school districts have an obligation called child fine. This is found under both Section 504 and the IDEA. So under both, school districts have an ongoing and affirmative obligation to identify, locate, and evaluate students with disabilities. Part of that identification can come from a teacher referral or a parent request. A teacher may refer a student who is suspected of having a disability and in need of special education and related services to the student building level committee. The SBLC may recommend interventions, or RTI, or that the student be referred for a 1508 evaluation, which is also the same thing as an IDEA evaluation. Also, a parent may make a request in writing for a 1508 evaluation. Response to intervention, or RTI. So if a school district decides to implement interventions, it can't use this as an excuse to delay or deny an evaluation. RTI can occur while the evaluation is being conducted. Some interventions may include preferential seating or extra time. Those are pretty common. A 1508 evaluation. So once a school district identifies a student as being suspected of having a disability and in need of special education and related services, it must provide or receive written consent from a parent before conducting the evaluation. Then the school district has 60 business days from receiving parental consent to complete the evaluation. Bulletin 1508 describes the procedures for completing the evaluation and the qualifications for each exceptionality. Following the initial evaluation, a reevaluation is required at least every 3 years as needed and before a student is exited from special education. Evaluation results. Parents are entitled to receive a copy of the report that speaks to the results of the evaluation. And they may raise any questions with a member of the evaluation team. If a student does not qualify for special education services as determined or as written in the evaluation results, the student still may qualify for a 504 plan. If a parent does not agree with the results of the evaluation, the parent may request an independent educational evaluation at the school district's cost. It's important to note that this request must be made in writing. And then as a general rule, we encourage and recommend that parents put most of their communications with the school district in writing so that there is a record. The individual education program. So after a student is found eligible for special education, an individual education program is developed. So this is developed largely from the evaluation results and from parent input. It describes the parent's concerns and the student's needs and accommodations, goals, and objectives. IEP team members. A parent and anyone that the parent wishes to bring, a regular education teacher of the student, a special education teacher of the student, a school district officer with information and ability to make decisions for the district, so someone who is able to sign off on accommodations and services for the student. An individual who can interpret the evaluation results. Individuals with knowledge or special expertise regarding the student. This can include a therapist. I've seen an ABA therapist participate at IEP meetings, and whenever appropriate, the student. The IEP meeting must be held within 30 days of the initial evaluation staffing meeting. So after there's a meeting to discuss the results of the evaluation where a student is found eligible, then the initial IEP meeting must be held within 30 days of that. And then at least once a year following the initial IEP meeting. Either the parent or the school can request a meeting at any time. So in addition to the required once a year, a parent or teacher or the school district personnel can also call for a meeting. Behavior and discipline. This is where I end, and now I hand it over to Ken.
Behavioral concerns that are related to the students' disabilities must and should be addressed via appropriate assessments and recommendations and recommended supports. And this is part of a student's IEP. The failure to consider and provide for needed behavioral supports through the IEP process is likely to result in a child not receiving a meaningful educational benefit or FAPE. So, as I said, this is a key component of the entire process. So, before determining how to assist the student with behavioral concerns, a functional behavioral assessment, frequently called just an FBA, is conducted, and that's usually by a behavioral interventionist, a psychologist, and the purpose is to try to find out why the student engages in the behavior in question. And that's usually done by observation, discussing with teachers and other staff, and then attempt to identify what the behavior is, what's occurring when the behavior happens, and what benefit the student gets from the behavior, whether it's to escape performing a task that he or she doesn't want to do, get attention, things like that. And once that is completed, then the behavioral intervention plan, or BIP, is developed. And I think that's right here. And that's developed with teachers and other staff members, the parent, and at any IEP meeting, a parent can bring anyone they wish. So if it's someone who's working with the student outside of the school, who has knowledge of the student's behavior, the parent can bring that person to participate in the development of the plan. And what it does is provides a roadmap on how to address and minimize and track the behaviors related to the student's disability. And what it generally contains is determining, okay, what's a sign that the student is starting to get upset? And then what should the first step be? Try to remove whatever that is causing the behavior. And then a progression of interventions and techniques to be done if the student's behavior escalates. And, it's not a behavior contract, it's not a punishment, and it's part of the student's IEP or 504 plan. And, the discipline protections are under the IDEA and Section 504 for qualifying students. And these are very significant protections for these students, and that they are not available for regular education students. And the purpose is so that students are not punished for disability-related behaviors, as I discussed a little earlier. And in Louisiana has laws that restrict the use of restraint and seclusion for students with disabilities. And the seclusion and physical restraint cannot be used as a form of discipline or punishment, as a threat to control, bullying, to obtain behavioral compliance, or for the convenience of school personnel. And right below what I just read, you can see the citation to the state law that details what the law is, obviously. But the State Department of Education's website has their regulations, and they're very detailed. And you can access that. You can just Google restraint and seclusion, Louisiana, and you will find the link to it. And it's very detailed because it's very serious what can happen and what unfortunately has happened in the past when restraint and seclusion is used inappropriately. Okay. So disciplinary changes in placement. So under the IDEA, a manifestation determination, otherwise known as an MDR, must be held for all disciplinary changes planned that contemplates a change to a more restrictive placement. And that occurs when a student is suspended for more than a total of 10 days in a school year, or there is a pattern of removals. And a pattern of removal could be if a student has a issue with fighting, let's say, and a student gets into a fight 2 or 3 times and gets suspended, that's would be an example of a pattern of removal. Also, and this happens fairly frequently, a parent will be called from the school to pick their child up, take the child home for the remainder of the day because the child's having a bad day or something like that. That is considered a suspension. And it's a very good idea for parents to document things that happen, as Shannon said, and a good practice is maybe have a little notebook and write down the date, time, and who you spoke with, who called you from the school, saying that you need to pick your child up. Because if later on there's a question about whether your child has been suspended more than 10 days or whatever, you will have a record, because on the attendance records, it will likely show on that date, it'll just say parent removed student. And that doesn't indicate that it was due to behavior. So,
all right, and I'm going to jump in here. I hate to cut you guys off while we're getting into such good information, but we're coming to the end of the half hour, and we have some questions in the Q&A. So did you want to make any final points or hit any final slides before we do that, or did you want to jump in?
I mean, could I just do the MDR first, because it's kind of important?
Yeah, let's do that, and then I'll read the questions.
Okay. So a manifestation determination review, or an MDR, is when the school is either recommending a student for expulsion, or we're at a point where it could be a change of placement. So a notice is sent to the parent, a prior written notice, as they're supposed to do for all meetings, regarding the MDR's purpose, the proposed date and time of the meeting. The participants include relevant members of the student's IEP team. The parent may bring anyone they wish and any supporting documents or evidence they believe to be relevant. It's a MDR has to occur within 10 days of the recommendation for either expulsion or the change of placement. It's a very good practice for a parent to get a letter from a treating physician that explains why the behavior is related to the student's diagnosis. The more detail, the better, but a lot of doctors will just write a very short letter. I've been treating this student has this diagnosis, and the behavior is related. It's better than nothing, but if you can get more, it'll definitely help. The team, which the parent is part of, then determines actually, let's go to the next slide because I think, right. So the manifestation is, was the behavior caused by or had a direct substantial relationship to the child's disability, or if the conduct in question was a direct result of the school district's failure to implement the student's IEP. So this is where the importance of having some documentation to support the argument that the behavior in question is related to the student's diagnosis. Often if student has ADHD and the student engages in a behavior that may be covered or not, there's often a debate among other staff whether it's related. So the more evidence you have, if you have someone who's working with the student outside of school, come to the meeting, that's important. It is not, the decision is not, doesn't have to be unanimous. Each participant, each member of the team will be asked if they believe it's related or not. And at the end of the day, yes or no, whichever has the more people supporting it, that will be the determination. And if it's determined that it's not related, depending on the school district, some school districts do the MDR. Okay, I'll just move on to the next card. If it's found not to be a manifestation, the student may be disciplined by having the placement changed. Usually it will be to an alternative school setting. In this instance, the student will still has the right to receive the appropriate education. And if the student does go to the alternative setting, there should be another IEP meeting because there should be an IEP meeting anyway, because it's only the IEP committee can actually change the placement. Even though a hearing officer may uphold a recommendation for expulsion, it goes to the IEP committee, which will generally support that, but there would need to be another meeting at the alternative school. And I think with that, is that the last card? And if it is a manifestation, the behaviors, they have to go over the FBA and the behavioral intervention plan, and the student returns to the same, his placement, unless there is one of three exceptions. If there's a weapon involved, if there are drugs involved, or a serious bodily injury, in which case the student, regardless of whether it's a manifestation, can be sent to an alternative placement for 45 days.
Excellent. So let me read some questions from the Q&A, and if we have any more questions, please call us at 1-800-960-7705 or visit our website at disabilityrightsla.org. And all of this information, we have our staff has this on hand, any of these links and helpful tips. We have this knowledge that we want to share, and so feel free to get in touch with us. Let me read, we have a question from the Q&A saying that parents are asking what to do if they experience, parents are asking what to do to determine if IDEA, FAPE applies to charter schools in Louisiana.
They do.
Okay, great. And then a follow-up is, what do parents do if they experience FBA, BIP, and it is not added to the IEP or not implemented fully, and or the child with a disability is being, quote, punished disciplinarily, including being sent home regularly from school?
I missed the beginning, but if a student is being sent home regularly from school, was this student had an IEP? Like I said, I missed the beginning of the question.
If they experience it, it looks like they're saying if FBA/BIP is not added to the IEP or is not implemented fully.
Well, if there isn't an FBA and a BIP, and the student is, and I don't know why the student is receiving special education services, but it's probably somewhat related to. Yeah, if it isn't done, then the parent should set up an IEP meeting and say, I want to have an FBA and a BIP developed, because if the student is frequently being sent home for behaviors, there's clearly a need to address it, and the student's not receiving FAPE at that time.
Great. And then finally, well, two questions, maybe you can get in one answer. Parents are asking, can an MDR be conducted without the parent present? Also, can an IEP meeting occur without the parent present?
Okay, the way it should operate is the parent receives a prior written notice, whether it's an IEP meeting or an MDR, describing what I had said earlier, what's supposed to be contained in it. If the parent is unable to attend, the parent should contact whoever the contact person is and say, I can't attend because of whatever reason, we need to reschedule. If the parent does not respond to the notice, the school system needs to take some additional attempts to contact the parent. If the parent still refuses to participate, respond, I believe they can then proceed. But the school has to be able to document they've done this, and it has to be more than just making a phone call, or it has to be, several times before that could occur.
And then one follow-up, and forgive me if I missed you answer this, asking, can private doctors and therapists attend the IEP meeting and or the MDR?
And anyone the parent wishes to invite can participate, and should, if that's what the parent requests.
Well, it looks like that's everything in the Q&A. Thanks everybody so much for attending this webinar. Thanks again, Janice King from New Orleans Sign Language Services, for providing ASL interpretation. Thanks to Shannon Barnes and Ken Kolb, our staff attorneys, who shared all this knowledge about all the work we do for education. Again, for more information about this work and all the other work we do at Disability Rights Louisiana, visit our website, disabilityrightsla.org. Call us at 1-800-960-7705. Again, we have 2 lunch and learns next week, Tuesday and Thursday, noon. Stay tuned to our social media for more. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you around soon.